All right, guys, I'm here at Propeller Coffee. Fuji's putting on a little event here for the new GFX100RF, and I haven't got a chance to use this camera yet, so this is going to be my first impression, so let's go in. We're getting a silver one. Thank you. Okay. Honestly, this just feels like how I'd want the X100 to feel, with the extra grip. I forgot how to say the word grip, but I like how much taller this camera is, and that would make sense because it's housing a 102 megapixel medium format sensor, and that's the same sensor that's in the GFX100S Mark II, which I reviewed last year. It's got a beautiful design, it feels amazing, the fit and finish is top notch. I'll have all the matched neural dials, and has a few dials that we haven't seen before, and I'll get to those in a bit. This camera also has a brand new lens we've never seen before. It's a 35mm f4, which is basically a 28mm full frame equivalent, and I'll talk about this controversial lens in a bit. It's got a 3.2-inch, 2.1 million dot tilting touchscreen, 5.76 million dot OLED EVF, and it comes with this really nice square lens hood, which I think completes the look of this camera, and it comes in at 735 grams with the battery, and this camera has two UHS 2 SD card slots, and when it comes to I/O, it's got a headphone and mic jacks, as well as a USB-C port and micro HDMI. Sometimes Fuji's not afraid to try new things, and they put a digital teleconverter lever on the front of this camera, lets you cycle through 35mm, 45mm, 63mm, and 80mm, and it windows in on the sensor every time because you have so much resolution, and at 80mm you're still getting around a 20 megapixel file. Technically, this camera should perform the same as a GFX100S Mark II in terms of image quality and autofocus. So I wanted to try out the eye autofocus detection because it should have all the same algorithms in it. And Uniqlo was a partner with Fuji on this event. That's why all the models look like they're dressed for a spring lookbook. Anyway, I pulled Jasmine aside to ask her if we could try out some eye autofocus detection, and I punched into 63mm on the digital teleconverter. As you can see, the eye autofocus detection is working perfect, but I will say, looking back at these portraits, they aren't really anything special in terms of how this lens looks. And that's mainly because this isn't made for portraits. This lens is going to be better for street photography, landscapes, and travel. All right, since we're here with a bunch of photographers, let's go see what they think about this camera.
Aspect ratio, I think, is the most interesting part about this camera. For me, it completely changes the way that you shoot. When you can see a frame rather than visualizing what the frame would look like afterwards when you're editing it, I think changes the way that you're looking at composition and changes the way that you look at the world as a whole, because when you see a long frame, it seems more cinematic than when you're shooting like a wider aspect ratio. And so for me, I think from an artistry level, it becomes a completely different tool.
The cool thing about the GFX100RF is the design. They took the same design that you would see in the X100VI. It's nice and small, a tiny little bit bigger, but you do have that medium format sensor in there. Bring it everywhere with you, travel with it, and it doesn't feel like a burden. It's really nice and small.
I'm going to say the size. Now that's weird coming from two sides of my mouth because like if I put this in my hand, it almost still doesn't pass the hand test. But with a grip on this guy, this is kind of a nice like little package. It's an expensive package, but it's nice.
Like the X100VI, but for Kofi hands.
So when I first pulled this out of the box, I was super surprised by just the overall build quality. I didn't expect that when I saw the press release photos. But the other thing that I was also really impressed by is all of the accessories that actually come in the box. So you have this nice little rope style strap, the square camera hood, and a protection filter, which is super unique. No other camera really has that. So,
in my opinion, my favorite thing is the aspect ratio dial. I love shooting in 65x24 X-band. It's absolutely my favorite thing. And having the ability to just, switch between crop modes, get different frames, get different photos. It's like you can get multiple photos in just one with the 100 megapixel sensor. So that's my favorite thing.
I think that the camera kind of forces you to go kind of back to like the bare bones of photography, and Fuji does romance best, so you're just going back to nostalgia. I think that's what I appreciate about Fuji in general, but the camera itself, I guess, prompts you to be a little bit more intentional.
I feel like that's with most Fuji cameras. You're kind of slowed down, take your time, get the shot. You're not spraying and praying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you were on the main advertising campaign for this camera, so that's pretty dope. We'll insert that photo right now. All right, I want to jump in here real quick and talk about today's sponsor, and that's Artlist. Now, they teased AI generative photo and video a couple months ago, and it's finally here, and I want to show you guys because it's pretty cool. So they have a bunch of different styles to choose from, and this way the AI has a place to start from. And I think the storyboard option is going to be really useful for filmmakers. Now I chose warm and realism because it was kind of the vibes I wanted to go for. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because you have to describe every single thing you want in that image in order for the AI to generate it. And you might have to tweak some things here and there to get it to pump out something you really want. But after a couple of tries, I was actually able to generate exactly what I wanted. Now from here, you can upscale the image or animate the image. And the cool thing is with this AI is it'll actually enter in its own prompt to give you some kind of a cinematic scene. And just using the default AI settings, it actually generated an amazing video. Now the time to generate will vary because you do have the option of 720p or 1080p between 5 seconds or 10 seconds. If it's a 5-second clip in 720p, it takes about 5 to 6 minutes. And then if you're going 1080p, it's about double that time. Now I generated a bunch of different clips to make a little montage of a Western scene, but it's pretty cool what you can actually do with this, and this is just the beta. Anyway, that's the new generative AI photo and video inside of Artlist, which is mind-blowing. Like if you can't find some weird, unique thing you're looking for in the stock photo or video, you can now just create it out of thin air. And if you have the max plan, you'll already have it. And if you want to try it out for free for 2 months, make sure to check out my link in the description. Everyone I talked to seemed to love this aspect ratio dial, and I don't know how often you're changing your aspect, but this is something new from Fuji. They've included all your main aspects as some weird ones, but they have 65x24, which is X-Pan. I love shooting that wide cinematic looking frame, but then there's weird ones like 17x6, which I don't know who's shooting in that. Now these aspect crops only affect the JPEG, so if you're shooting RAW and JPEG, you'll still get the full resolution RAW file.
So just like the X100RF, this does have a built-in ND filter. So this has a 4-stop ND filter, which is pretty handy because this camera is capped at 1/4000th of a second shutter. So if you're shooting in super harsh, bright sun, that's gonna help out a lot. And then when it comes to shooting video, you don't necessarily have to screw on an ND filter because you can just flick it on inside the camera. All right, we're here with Billy, Fujifilm, Billy. I got a couple questions for you about the GFX100RF. The first one is, why f4?
The idea of this camera really is to keep the size down. And so f4 was the ideal aperture to ensure that the camera itself wasn't too big, because we want this camera to be an everyday camera. Now, the second part of it was to use sort of the 35mm focal length. You know, in full frame terms, it's like 28mm, right? And we know at 28mm, f4, you could probably handhold a shot, maybe if you're really good at 1/50th of a second, and definitely at 1/30th of a second, right? And so the idea between that, matching that with the leaf shutter, we felt was appropriate for a camera like this. Any thicker, and it would take away from the experience.
The body design, is the lens inside the body?
Yeah, so
like the X100RF?
Yeah, so it's pretty impressive on, you know, making lenses that can resolve, you know, 100 megapixels, right? That's a lot of resolution. And so the whole design, you know, it used special aspherical lenses. It even had some nano GI coating to reduce, you know, internal reflection. And that whole lens component, yeah, fits in a little bit in the camera in order to fit that. And so, you know, we couldn't even, you know, fit an IBIS unit yet, just because, you know, it would just, again, make the camera way too thick.
Yeah. IBIS. Why no IBIS? But that makes sense. Like, if you've got half the lens inside the camera body, and then you've got a massive sensor, it would probably change the size too. Like the camera would be taller probably, and so it makes sense due to physics why it doesn't have IBIS. Now I was playing with video, and the digital stabilization in video is actually not that bad. This does have a leaf shutter built into it, and so that reduces the amount of shutter shock, which, you know, when you're shooting at 100 megapixels with no IBIS, it definitely helps.
Now, just like on the X100RF cameras, this does have a control lever, but because this doesn't have an OVF or an EVF to switch between, they actually made it 4 custom buttons. So short press to the left long press to the left, short press to the right, long press to the right. You can set those up, add in whatever you want. This camera is actually really customizable. When I went into the menu, I was surprised at how many different custom buttons you can change. And I actually think that's a really clever way of implementing that control lever. I really like what Fuji's doing here. It's something completely different, and seeing them push the boundaries of what you can do with a medium format sensor. I don't know who this camera is really for. It's very niche. It's kind of expensive. It's going to be for street photography, travel, and landscapes. And there are tons of camera choices in those categories that are a lot cheaper, but maybe you want those 16-bit 100 megapixel RAW files that you can't get in, say, like an X100 and still have a camera that's roughly the same size.
All right, it's starting to rain outside here, but the cool thing about this camera is it's actually weather sealed. I don't know if many people talked about that, but once you put your front lens filter on here, it actually seals the camera. All right, guys, so that is my first impressions of the GFX100RF. And this camera does have a few quirks, but it's definitely kind of in its own league. Like, there really isn't a medium format, fixed lens digital camera out there. And I'd say its closest competitor is probably the Leica Q3. I will probably get in a review unit to do a full review on this thing, so make sure to stay tuned for that. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down twice. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, and see you guys in the next one. All right, so we can do a little digital teleconverter crop on these clanky metal chimes. Those are so that you know when the tornado's coming in every movie. There's nothing better than taking a solid cinematic portrait of a croissant.
There's the
Dude,
advertisement.
I can't believe how good of a photographer I am. Fuji should just give me this camera. We literally have the worst weather. It's freezing out here, and I only have the camera for 10 more minutes.